Hi, I'm Cassie Habel. I'm the director for the Truckee Downtown Merchants Association. We are the producers of Art and Soul Downtown Truckee Art Walk. We're going into our 4th annual Art Walk. We're really excited about the people who are participating in the Art Walk, as well as how we're going to celebrate our local community. Well, imagine this. Imagine you're strolling down historic downtown Truckee, from Brickletown, which is where Burger Me is, all the way through Commercial Road to Church Street and to West River Street. There's going to be approximately 36 stops with an artist at every stop. There's going to be bands playing while you're walking down the sidewalk, and you're going to be able to go into different establishments, roughly 23 of them, and have sips of beer and or wine, and we have 12 of them will have food tasting. So this event is about going from one place to the next place, sipping on craft beer, sipping on wine, trying food, and interacting with artists. The artists are going to be showcasing their art, but also demoing. So you're going to have Alana Hughes from Riverside Studio throwing pottery. You're going to have Carol Sesko over at Tahoe University painting. We're going to have sculpture gardens in the Center Island from Mountain Forge. We're going to have poem guys. This is really exciting for me. There's these gentlemen who write poems. So you go up to them, you tell them, I want a poem, and that's just that interaction that's going to happen. Amy Hadd will be showcasing at Uncorked. Uncorked will be one of our wine stops. Art Truckee is one of our wine stops. We have 50/50 Brewing Company sponsoring 3 different locations, Cooking Gallery and Word After Word, as well as Alibi sponsoring a location for beer. Our food vendors, our sponsors are all local Truckee restaurants. You can find tickets at historictruckee.com and or go locally to the Cooking Gallery. If you have any questions regarding Art and Soul, you can feel free to call 530-277-1302, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, tickets are available at historictruckee.com and locally here in Truckee at the Cooking Gallery on Commercial Road.
Aloha, I'm Just Mark. I'm a local tattoo artist here in Truckee. I've been tattooing in this community for 12 years now, and I'm also a graphic artist as well. I've had my studio, Truth Tattoo, has been a stop on this event for years, for a couple of years running, and I'm pleased to be involved in actually doing art for this event this year. This here is Jim Morrison, one of my spirit guides and major influences in ways of life. So these paintings that I'm showing here are acrylic on canvas, and they are my heroes. They're the people that have meant things to me. Right now I'm attempting to touch people's nostalgic memories and kind of taking the cheap shot of piggybacking the great artists in this world and doing paintings of them that just take people back to the moments that they enjoyed those people's work. So I'll be showing these works at Sotheby's here at Art and Soul. And amongst other things that I do all kinds of different artwork, acrylic, oil, watercolors, all kinds of stuff. And right now I'm painting the things that I like, and I'm hoping to commission work that other people would want to see this year. So I'm happy to showcase this work here.
My name is Monica Piper Johnson, and I'm a landscape oil painter. I live in Incline Village, Nevada. I've been a Tahoe local now 23 years. And I have a studio located in Incline Village called Piper J Studio, and my website is monicapiperjohnson.com. And I'm really excited to participate in the Art and Soul event this year in Truckee. I'll be set up at Cabona's, and I'll actually be painting and demonstrating on location and have a variety of my art available to see. So I mostly paint in what's called plein air. I paint outside on location, out in the open air. So I'm actually looking at what I'm painting. And my favorite, and how I normally paint is also with a knife. I love thick paint, I love texture, I don't use brushes, I paint with a palette knife, and just gives, it keeps it impressionistic and loose. And I do larger pieces in the studio as well, and commissions, but most of my works like these, for example, are smaller because they actually are done on location. And so I love living in Tahoe. There's so many beautiful places to get outside and paint. And
Hi, I'm Carol Sesko, and I'm an artist based here in Truckee, California. I'm participating in Art and Soul this year, and I'm really excited about it. This is an example of my work. I work in acrylic and also mixed media. I've been painting for a long time, but what I enjoy most about my painting is adding in texture and creating surfaces that kind of catch the light. I like bold graphic designs. I like my paintings to have a lot of energy and hum. This piece over here, so this piece is an example of all the different textures that I really get excited about working with. And this has pine needles that are from Truckee Forest, little pieces of mirror that I've embedded and painted on top of, different textiles that create another texture. And then also I put in the mountains just to kind of reference the area that I love living in. I just get inspired by color. I am just every idea leads to another one, and it's always a process of editing and adding and subtracting and to get a unified whole. This year on Art and Soul, I'm exhibiting at Tahoe University on West River Street, and I'm really excited. It's a beautiful building, and I hope to see you there. You can see more of my work at carolsesko.com.
Hi, my name is Sarah Smith, and I'm a local painter here in beautiful Tahoe, Truckee. I'm going to be one of the featured artists at Art and Soul coming up in Truckee in the middle of September. I show with several local galleries, and beside me you'll see a few of my examples of my work. I work mostly in acrylic, but I also work in a mix of several other types of media because my inspiration for this entire series has to do with the intersection of humanity and our wild world. The things that we love, that we reach for. We come here and we want to touch the wild. And by doing so and by our interaction with it, always we leave our mark, we change it. So these pieces are created using a mix of materials that reflect the urban world as well. So I'm using spray paint, I'm using stencils, I'm using graffiti markers, I'm using building materials, I'm using reclaimed materials, and all of that to build these images of our wild neighbors. So you can find me at www.saralsmith.com. You can find me at Riverside Studios downtown here in Truckee. You can find me at Tahoe University on West River Street. You can find several of my small works over at Word After Word Books and also at Blue Wolf Studios over in Kings Beach.
Hi, my name is Alana Hughes, and I started Riverside Studios in 2001 downtown, and we feature amazing local artists. We're thankful to be in Truckee, where we have some of the best artists, and we've been just received an award last year for as being a cultural district. I myself am really inspired to use my hands and get dirty and sink deep down into clay. I love it. I am inspired by natural aspects of the environment, such as aspen leaves, which you can see here on this platter. I also like to leave a window into the clay so that way people can really get to feel that this is made from the earth. It's not something that has been manufactured, it's handmade. Everything that we have at Riverside Studios is, for the most part, locally made, and it's all handcrafted. So I'll be at Art and Soul, which is my favorite downtown event. It's where people could really get to know what the community is doing on a very tangible level. So I encourage everybody to come and stop by and show your support. You can contact Riverside Studios at riversideartstudios.com, or you can also check my personal website, alanahughes.com. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michelle Erskine, co-owner of Erskine Photography. You can see some sample prints behind me. We are located at our Truckee, which is at 10072 Donner Pass Road, or you can check us out at arttruckee.com or erskinephotography.com. Here at Art Truckee, we're super excited for Art and Soul on September 15th. We have Veronica Lichter is our presenting artist. She's going to be doing some live painting for you, along with music by the extraordinary Peter DiMattei on classical and Latin guitar. Here at Art Truckee, we have lots of events happening all the time. We have open mic every third Friday of the month. We have a partnership with the Community Theater, which is on September 22nd. And you can check out all of our events at rtruckee.com or our Facebook page.
Hello and good day to all of you out there watching this video. I'm Michael DiMartino, the host and producer for Golden Road TV and Radio, and today I'm working in collaboration with ARC, the Alliance for Resilient Communities, and we have the great honor to spend some time, get to know, and to interview David Howland. So welcome.
Thank you for having me here today.
And we got to meet the other day at the farmers market briefly. You're doing some really important work, which has come to light in recently the legal case with the gentleman in Vallejo who won against Monsanto, but also with Michael Parson, who got front page on the Union talking about the effect of Roundup on the organic farms in Nevada County. So you're here, you're a specialist, you have an illustrious history. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background of what brings you to this work today.
Well, in the last 7 years, I've been working on a biological sensor that monitors the level of life in water or other fluids. It provides an output in proportion to how much life is in the fluids. And prior to that, I managed an engineering department, product development in water treatment, especially in chemicals, chemical controls, and such.
So you're not a hobbyist, you really are a specialist.
Yes, fair enough.
Fantastic, fantastic, great. So thanks for being here today, and let's get right to it. Tell us here in Nevada County and for many around the world, what's happening and what's in our water.
Well, there's a lot of stuff in our water, and it's quite a challenge for the water providers to manage it. This is surface water primarily here. Water treatment intends to remove toxins and to control pathogens, and they do a pretty good job of that, actually. Many toxins, including pesticides, are entering our water, and that's a big concern to the farming community here, as they use the raw water before it goes through the treatment plants.
And of course, pharmaceuticals,
Yes.
all sorts of things. You get microplastics are getting into the water.
Yes, and the mining industry as well.
Right. So let's elaborate. Again, we could talk for hours on this topic, but what's the difference when we get water out of our tap between treatment and filtration?
Water treatment is much more comprehensive than just water filtering. And water filtering is still absolutely essential that you do that on your taps and your showers and your schools and what have you. Absolutely essential, especially in these day and ages. Yeah.
And of course, chlorine and all the other things, maybe rusty pipes, which all affect us outside of the pesticides and the pharmaceuticals and all the other toxins that find their way into our drinking water.
Yeah, that's correct. If you have pipes that are super old, it will leach in lead, for example, and be beyond the limits.
Right.
Yeah.
So can you give us a little bit of insight of what water providers must go through as far as regulations to bring drinking water to consumers?
They're responsible to meet maximum contamination levels set on the toxins that they're responsible to remove from the water.
And is it true that some toxins can't be removed from drinking water?
Some toxins are much more difficult to remove from water in certain water processes, and they may or may not include those water processes in water treatment.
So knowing this information here specifically in Nevada County, what are the concerns of farmers, whether they're getting water from the NID ditch or they're getting it from the tap or through public utilities? What's the big concern?
Primarily would be the pesticides that are in the water. Water providers are using Roundup in the ditches, and they're approved to do so. Farmers are a little concerned with that. There's also sources of Roundup and other pesticides in the raw water before the treatment plants. And so the organic farmers are especially concerned that they're feeding Roundup to their plants and animals.
Which is what got Michael Parsons his front page interview in the Union, because he is an organic farmer, and he brought to light that, well, a lot of the farms here in the county might not really be organic because they're using this NID, this Roundup and glyphosate tainted water, along with all of the other toxins that are potentially in the water. So knowing that, is there a history of toxic chemicals in the United States that are being used that are directly affecting consumers in general?
Well, yes, that brings us to this guy here. In 1917, what's called the radium girls were hired to paint the radium on the dials of watches and clocks. And what was interesting is nobody knew at the time that was a toxin. And it took 21 years or so before they realized that. And some of the deceased bodies of the ones that survived glow in the dark. So that's pretty heavy stuff.
So, of course, in this day and age, there's a lot more things that are coming to light, things like the effects of GMOs, the use of bio and geoengineering to potentially slow down climate change. So we can see everywhere fluoride in our water, inorganic food, pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, that there are a lot of toxins that are using in our water. So is there something that we can add to our water or do to our water to make it a little safer?
Water filtration is the point of use. Water filtration is the thing that we must do more now than ever before.
Right.
And it has to be the appropriate kind of water filtration, and they have to be serviced properly. That's what we can do.
Right. So again, we could go on this subject, I know, for a lot of time, but we'd like to get right to the point. We don't want to just bring issues to light here through Golden Road TV and ARC. We want to really give solutions. So what can people do besides the water filter?
Yeah, water filtration is the biggest thing they can do, but they can also vote for people that are more interested in health issues. They can learn and teach. They can inspire others. They can ensure point-of-use water filtration is in their schools. And they can consciously look for water filtration in point of use and make a change there. And they can get involved in any way that makes sense to them.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, once again, you're tuning into Golden Road TV. I'm your host, Michael DiMartino, working in collaboration with ARC, the Alliance for Resilient Communities. I want to thank David Howland for his time and his expertise, and also for some really exciting patents and inventions that you're working on that are dealing with some of these issues. So thank you so much for your time.
Exactly.
All right. And we'll be back.
Let's just think about this for a second. Over half American kids are sick with a chronic condition, and you heard me out there defining on the steps what a chronic condition was, right? It's a situation where you've had a health issue for more than 3 months and that there's no cure. That's what a chronic health condition is. We spend the least on food, the most on health care, give the highest number of vaccines, and have the sickest kids of any industrialized country. So I'm saying, what are we doing? If every pediatrician is not here knocking on these legislators' doors, then I don't know what's going on. Well, I can tell you where they are. They're in their practices seeing kids 1 every 10 minutes, 1 every 15 minutes, and I'm going to tell you, in defense of the pediatricians, I'm one, that you really can't get into this stuff when you're seeing kids every 10 to 15 minutes. It's impossible, and that's what your schedule looks like. One every 15 minutes, that's what we're doing. Are you gonna get into all this? Wow. Really hard. So that's why it's really up to make some of these changes. After the end of these talks, you're gonna know more than your pediatrician. So what happened to me? And I wanna share what happened to me because it can happen to you. And I think I'm really preaching to the choir, to this group, but maybe to not to some of our legislators. When I read Jeffrey's book, I never heard of this guy. But Jeffrey on page 16 started talking about Dr. Arpad Pusztai. And so I had to read about Arpad Pusztai. He's Hungarian. I'm married to a Hungarian. My mother-in-law was so happy when I started talking about him. And so what I learned from Arpad is that, well, wait a second. This guy was studying genetically modified potatoes in 1996, almost 22 years ago. And he was the first one to look at this problem of genetically modified food. So why am I talking about GM food? We're talking about glyphosate. Is because they're linked. Herbicide-tolerant crops were developed so we can spray more Roundup or more glyphosate. And what Arpad found, and I'm going to show this histopathology slide, you're not medical professionals, you're not med students, but you're not a bunch of dummies. We're going to elevate this conversation. This is what he saw. And when I saw these slides, I went, you've got to be kidding me. Why didn't anybody tell me this? Jeffrey Smith told me, and this is what I saw. When Arpad fed these rats genetically modified potatoes, and then he looked at the GM-fed rats and the non-GM-fed rats, he saw that the intestinal wall villi were abnormal. Now I'm saying, wait a minute, those are the little finger-like projections lining your gut, and that's where the absorption of all your nutrient happens. So you mean to tell me we have disruption of the gut of those rats that ate the GM potatoes? Is that what's causing leaky gut? The one that I'm telling you that I'm seeing in just about every one of your kids, and mine too. What he also found was in the stomach lining of those rats that they had increased cell growth. That's called hyperplasia. Well, why is that important? Hyperplasia is the precursor to dysplasia. Did you all hear my New York accent? Yeah, right. Hyperplasia. I'll spare you. I won't go to. Maybe I should go New York on you. I don't know. Can I talk like I'm from New York? So what he found is that there's all this hyperplasia, precursor to dysplasia, precursor to cancer. And was this the cancerous precursor that we were seeing from the genetic modified process? Possibly. That's what he found. So let me switch gears a little bit. So if you have an herbicide-tolerant plant that's genetically modified, and you're spraying a lot of glyphosate on it, they're linked. Which one's causing what? I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm really not sure. If you said, is it the GM process? Is it the glyphosate? It's likely both. And Sarah Leaney actually took a look at that. So what I try to do is say, why is this stuff not so good? No way, no. Why do I say that? Glyphosate, it's a chelator. You heard Howard talk about that. It binds micronutrients, and it's likely doing it in our kids. So how do I know that glyphosate is binding minerals in our kids? I don't know. All I know is they're eating it. I check their nutrient levels, and they're low. I fix their diets, and it goes up. Come on, people, this is not hard, right? This is like common sense. You know, you could all be clinicians and practitioners here. So and I gave you a study here, just so you know, because everybody wants data. I'm giving you data. Clinical correlation, nutrient deficiencies in kids, magnesium, zinc, are associated with learning disorders, ADHD, insomnia, mood disturbances, etc. Glyphosate is a carcinogen. You heard that. You heard the World Health Organization, the IARC. They did the studies in animals. It's really hard to study humans. And they found that it's a carcinogen class 2A. It would be a class 1 if it was studied in humans. And actually, when Monsanto first brought this stuff to the EPA back in 1983, they found renal cell tubular adenomas in kidneys in rats fed glyphosate, by the way. So Monsanto's known this a long time, that there's carcinogenic potential. And they looked at those slides, and then they found another group of pathologists to look at the slides, and then the data kind of morphed. I think you're kind of getting a theme here on how data can change. Depends on who's looking at it. Glyphosate is an antibiotic. I mean, if Howard's stuff isn't convincing enough, what the cutting edge of research now is the effect of glyphosate on the microbiome and how that changes. Now, how do I know? Because I check kids' microbiome. I do something called PCR testing. I can order a test. It's not in regular conventional medicine. It's in one of the tools of integrative doctors or functional medicine doctors. We can do a test through Genova. I'm not plugging Genova, but that's where I order it. It's $134 if you have a PPO insurance. I can map out the entire microbiome of a kid and look at it. And what I find is disturbing. They have very few amounts of a microbiome. Their levels are low, and they have an abnormal distribution of the microbiome. And depending on what issue they have, you'll find abnormalities such as kids on the spectrum will have high levels of certain Clostridial species, or you'll see lots of strep species in kids who have pandas, or other opportunistic players. Remember, most of that bacteria are in your gut or are going to take over if they get a chance. They're not little happy bacteria here to help you. They're going to go over. And so when those lactobacilli and bifidobacteria are abnormal because they're killed off, like in Monica's study, all the bad players party. And that's what happens. And you see it. And when you make corrections, kids get better. How do I know? Well, for one, they're better. I asked the mom, how's Johnny? He's better. How's his stomach ache? Gone. Is he pooping? Yes, the constipation resolved. I'm going to retire on constipation. I treat constipation all day long. They're all constipated, digestive enzymes, better. Because we're checking the stool. We're doing analyses. Why do I do those analyses? Mom's report could be enough, by the way, but dads want data. You have to show those dads that data. They want to see it. Men want to see science. So, gosh darn it, I'm going to show them science. So, it's an antibiotic. Another good study about, this one is just off the press,
Ma'am,
and it shows an explanation for
Doctor,
antibiotic resistance.
I have a question. Is it okay to ask a question right now?
Can we do afterwards?
Oh, afterwards.
Can you save it? Will you remember it?
I'll remember it.
Try to remember. Thank you. Let me move on. It inhibits a pathway in plants, the shikimate pathway. There's a pathway responsible for producing certain neurochemicals, and it blocks the production of a certain group of amino acids called aromatic amino acids. And we were told that glyphosate wasn't harmful to humans because we don't have the shikimate pathway. And we don't. Humans don't have it, but our microbiome does. And that's key. It's another thing. So, what happens is the aromatics get blocked. Those aromatic amino acids, building blocks of protein, kids can't make neurotransmitters. Is that what's happening? I'm guessing. I don't know. Why don't I know? Because there are no studies. And glyphosate use is discriminatory. This is the last point I want to make. California's poorest counties have the highest application of glyphosate. And they are Tulare, Fresno, Merced, Del Norte, Madera, Lake, Imperial, Kern, and they're all part of the southern part of the Central Valley. And populations in these areas are mostly Latino. So our Latino kids are getting the most spraying involved. And this has been shown to be seen in Salinas Valley too, near Santa Cruz. And those kids have been studied for 19 years out of UC Berkeley. And those kids who are also heavily sprayed with organophosphates, which is not glyphosate, but glyphosate is a type of organophosphate, those kids have been shown to have some of the highest rates of ADHD. And my colleagues who work at UCSF with pediatricians have told me informally and anecdotally that when kids come in with severe ADHD, they say, yeah, they're probably from Salinas. That's how it's become. So I just want to wrap up by saying there's no doubt in the science that kids are tremendously affected by glyphosate and the genetic modification process. This is a no-brainer for me as a clinician to remove toxicants and toxins out of our children's environments. I believe that this is just, as Kathleen Halal said, it's just common sense. Thank you.
Jeffrey Smith, who is named the Person of the Year by Masters of Health magazine. He's the founder of the Institute for Responsible Technology. He's an author, a filmmaker. He had a laundromat before he did all this.
I did? I guess I did.
Anyway, most of us know Jeffrey Smith. Jeffrey.
I like to use the microphone. Thank you. We are seeing a pattern here in the glyphosate and GMO world that we've seen with lead, that we've seen with tobacco, that we continue to see over and over again. There's a certain game that gets played where they throw their experts, Bobby Kennedy calls them psyostitutes, and they throw rigged research and corrupt data, and they also have very heavy lobbying influence in places like this, in order to try and convince that there's no, that our science is wrong, and that their science is right, and that there is no problem. And so I have been fortunate enough to be traveling around the world on the GMO issue, which includes the glyphosate issue, and I have seen how Monsanto captures regulatory agencies and governments. I've been to 45 countries working in this area, and the activists will explain which person in government is the captured regulator or the captured minister or the ministry is taken over. And then I see in their rhetoric Monsanto's words. They captured the European Food Safety Authority, and they actually, EFSA, which is their version of the FDA, they literally cut and paste Monsanto's statements as their own. And maybe change a few words here and there. They've actually been charged with plagiarism. Not by Monsanto, by the public. So what I want to do is talk about how they're trying to defend against the World Health Organization's declaration that glyphosate is a class 2A carcinogen, which they said it definitely causes cancer in animals, it definitely causes mutations in human DNA, and where it is sprayed, there is higher concentrations of cancer. So it's also declared a carcinogen by the California government. And in France, they wanted to ban it. They're going to ban it completely in a few years. So these are, I don't know if you can see, I'm going to move myself so I can actually read them. So I'm going to leave the microphone for a minute. So this is liver and bile duct cancer incidence. And it's related to, thank you, my esteemed assistant. Thank you, Michelle. So this is a correlation. And I have to say that whenever I show slides of correlation, we have to put it into context. The fact that the line that is blue or purple, which is the amount of glyphosate applied to genetically engineered soy and corn, the fact that it is related to the increase of this cancer does not mean that it causes it. It's correlation, it's not causation. However, when you're looking at from an epidemiological standpoint and you have probable causation because you understand the mechanics that glyphosate causes problems in human DNA, oxidative stress, etc., and then you also see these epidemiological statistics, then that gives you a bigger picture. It gives you more data points from which to evaluate. So it is not irrelevant. It is just on its own, not causation. But I think it's relevant because if glyphosate is a probable human carcinogen, we probably should see some type of correlation. And here we see a correlation between liver and bile duct cancer. And here we have kidney and renal pelvic cancer. And here we have kidney and bladder cancer incidence. And here we have thyroid cancer. And here we have deaths due to myeloid leukemia. And this is discharges of breast cancer. In Argentina, they went house by house in an area that was of a city that was closer to the soybean fields. And they found disease in nearly every house. They found a tremendous increase. The respondents said got better when they switched to non-GMO and largely organic diets. Yes. So in that paper, I look not just at the carcinogenicity of glyphosate, but also the fact that it is a chelator, an antibiotic, it's linked to birth defects, that it's a mitochondrial toxin, and a number of other attributes of glyphosate, as well as the GMO disruption, as well as the Bt toxin. But let's take a look at some of the other correlational graphs the correlations between glyphosate use on GMOs and other diseases. Again, we want to caution. These do not mean that glyphosate is the cause. But I want you to see that if it is a cause, and that we can look scientifically and say, yes, there's reasons why we can say that glyphosate is likely promoting that particular disease because it has this particular mode of action at the gut, at the microbiome level, at the cellular level, etc. If you look at this and realize if glyphosate was responsible for 50%, 25%, even 10% of the damage that you're going to see in these slides, you realize it needs to be banned. And children are most at risk, and so we propose that it's banned initially or in the schools, daycare centers, and also parks. So this is hospital discharge of inflammatory bowel disease. The red is the glyphosate, the bars are the discharge of inflammatory bowel disease. This is deaths due to intestinal infection. I'm just going to move through these quickly. Acute kidney failure, deaths. ADHD. Anxiety. Schizophrenia. Autism prevalence for 6-year-olds. This is, if a correlation were exact, if the R value would be 1. This is 0.9972. Diabetes. Stroke deaths. Deaths due to senile dementia. Deaths due to Alzheimer's. Deaths from Parkinson's disease. Deaths due to obesity. Deaths due to high blood pressure. Anemia. Dementia. Insomnia. Each one of these we could take time and analyze. Insomnia, melatonin. People take melatonin at night to go to sleep. Serotonin, precursor to melatonin. Serotonin may be damaged because of the consumption of glyphosate. We can track these possible lines of causality. And we have enough information, not just in the animal feeding studies, but in the clinical experience of Dr. Perot and thousands of physicians and healthcare practitioners who are prescribing non-GMO diets. Their experience, the 3,256 people, the 150 lectures where I asked audience members what they got better from, we can see that there is a problem here. And we can track that glyphosate is probably a major contributor to that. And if you look at the animal feeding studies on animals exposed to glyphosate, you can see precursors or exacerbations of these same type of problems. We do not need to wait for more science to take reasonable steps. And the reasonable steps right now, it's too late to protect from the beginning this next generation. We need to rush like crazy to try and bring them back to a state of health. I've asked Dr. Perot and I've asked others, what's changed since the mid-90s when glyphosate started to increase 15-fold, when GMOs were introduced, etc., when the amount of glyphosate in our urine jumped by 13-fold since 1993. What's happened? And it's the same story every time, in children especially, and also in pets, and also in livestock. So what we propose, and we're going to take questions in a moment, what we propose is that we protect as much as possible from every different angle the next generation. And what the proposal is for today, in front of, laying before the feet of our leaders, of our political leaders who serve us, let's protect the children from the spraying of glyphosate, where they're at school for hours a day, or at daycare centers, or where they roll on the ground and play sports in parks, and where the dogs roll around in the parks and get pet by the kids and their hands go in their mouth. Let's be reasonable. Let's protect the future generation so that we do not continue with this disaster. Thank you very much.
or there, Hart, would you please come up and join our panel? And at this time, we'll take questions, and if you have a specific question for a specific speaker, then please ask it by name. Marianne?
I'm just wondering if the hands of the medical establishment are completely tied, because why is it that we're not doing, when a child comes in with cancer, we're not looking at levels of glyphosate in the tumor, in the child's blood supply? I mean, as a causative agent, and just from a point of view of like helping the child to heal, I mean, wouldn't it be a good idea if we could say to parents, as you have found maybe, that if you change the diet, you can heal the child, even when a child has cancer? Wouldn't it be a good idea to put them on an organic diet? Why then are we just banning them with carcinogens before we know anything about costs? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think to understand, things change slowly in conventional medicine, for sure. And in medical schools, it's still a pharmaceutical approach. Medical students receive a year of pharmacology. Maybe now it's up to 2 weeks of nutrition. And integrative medicine is only being offered in a few medical schools as an elective, and not necessarily as a mandatory requirement. So, but it is starting, the dialogue is starting to change, whether for other healing modalities. You also, can you all hear me? Need me on the mic? Is mic me up?
Yes.
Mic it up, okay. So the other thing to remember is that at the early part of the 1900s, when integrative medicine and holistic medicine was a huge part of the repertoire of clinicians, not just MDs, but of clinicians such as, you know, chiropractic care, homeopathy, herbal, and other types of medicine, there was a huge push by Rockefeller and others with pharmaceutical companies to ban that type of treatment. It was called the Flexner Report. And so that type of treatment went underground. And we are still locked to a degree in that type of training, that type of treatment, that pharmaceutical-based treatment. I think we needed to find a place to put products left over from the oil industry. And that's, I think we're still living in that part of it. We also can't forget the huge effect and influence of big pharma on medical schools and medical education, and they have a huge influence as well. Also, holistic treatments are also very affordable and low cost compared to pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceutical industries don't often have a lot of incentive to get people off their medications or drugs because they make money for every pill you take. So the incentive to get people off drugs is often lower. So I think that plays into it. And so, but it's starting to change. It is starting to change. It's not happening fast enough because you heard of the epidemic that we're in. So it needs to happen a little bit faster. Sorry for a long answer, but that's where we're at.
Another question.
Yeah, I'm curious, just in general, if there's anyone in this room who's from either a staffer or a congressperson in the California legislature, since that was the purpose of this, I thought.
There was one, but he left
Is there
early.
anybody here?
There was one, but he
There was
left
one?
early.
Do we know? Okay, so I'm just really sad.
What
that-
your audience was.
Yeah, because you
it's
guys are
us.
preaching to the choir here, and we need to be preaching to the legend. How do we make that happen?
But a comment that was made outside, and I should have said something earlier about this.
Mike,
Mike, please.
Thank you.
Preaching to the choir. I have never listened to a speaker on this subject, whether it be Jeffrey, Dr. Perro, Dr. Huber, Dr. McNeil, how many others that I'm privileged to work with. I always go away with something.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm not saying we're not going away with anything. I'm just saying you never hear it.
You are all speakers. You're all presenters in whatever size way it becomes. Because that's how we've been continuing to win this battle and continuing to gain the momentum. It's one person at a time that we have to continue to spread the message.
Another question.
This is a legal question. courts have taken a look at this issue, and Monsanto has been taken to court. In fact, there are a couple lawsuits that were filed about GMOs. And my question is, actually it's twofold. How has it been gone? In a book I'm reading now called, it's called Roundup, Making You Sicker Than You Think. They talked about a court case in here about how all these farmers tried to sue to stop this, and then they turned around and sued them. And what is the possibilities that we could win in court? We could possibly win in court and stop this.
It's an interesting angle. If, as an activist, we look at all the different ways. Do you do research, legislation,
We're a law.
litigation, education? Now, with litigation, it's a crapshoot. You don't really know. A friend of mine filed a class action against Monsanto, and the class action was turned down. And the New York Times later reported that that particular judge used to be a lawyer for Monsanto. He never made that public when he made his ruling, and he never recused himself. Clarence Thomas used to be a Monsanto attorney, and he wrote the majority opinion on a decision that favored Monsanto. It's hard to say whether we can win or not. The advantage of the law is that it can affect huge change very quickly. Once it's decided, the disadvantage, it can take years, cost lots of money, and if you lose, you end up impoverished with no incremental gain. Right. So because there's class actions representing now in terms of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and there's now new information showing a very tight correlation with acute myeloid leukemia, not just correlation, but also causative pathways, and that could provide another avenue. So I think that there is a possibility that these major lawsuits will take a big toll out of the pocketbooks of these companies, but there's no way to tell in advance.
My follow-up question is, since it's caused all these health issues that you said with children, have parents gotten a hold of other parental organizations and said, education organizations, and come forth and said that these are hurting our children and our future generations?
Yeah, good question. And the answer is yes. There are moms groups that are forming. We have one in Marin County, Moms Advocating Sustainability. There is one from Kathleen Halal's neck of the woods, Moms Across America, that she was co-founder with a gal named Zen Honeycutt. So there are many groups that are forming. There are other moms groups that are in local counties and municipalities. Those are better, well-known groups. But some of these things, what we're doing is, what I have focused on is going mom hand-to-hand combat. And you say, hey, what about the dads? Men are involved too. And I don't mean that, but I have to tell you, in my practice, in my clinic, I didn't rarely see dads, almost never. Perhaps the way our society's set up, dads are working, moms are bringing the kids in, but it seems that moms were particularly concerned, and that's who I went after, because moms spend 85% of the household budgets. So I heard Jeffrey talk about tipping points in the past, financial tipping points, and that's what we have focused on, that if we can get moms to create shopping and create these tipping points of what we're buying. I can tell you, I spend all the money in my house. Ask my husband. That if we change that, then we create a tipping point. So I think it's going to be, we're sitting here in the Capitol, but I really think it's going to be up to us. So regarding your question earlier, your question, yes, we need our legislators to give us the tools, but we can do the ground-to-ground work now, and I think we can do it. And that's why we're here.
And I can just add to that, I look at the faces today, and a lot of you are already guild members. If you're not a member of the California Guild, I'll put some business cards out on this table here. Please pick it up and join us, because we're all working together on this. Another question.
Doctor, I've been puzzled for a while. I've known about the PCRSA and its use in criminal law, and they could take a molecule, duplicate a billion copies in an afternoon. If your DNA is found on a crime scene, you go in jail. Okay. What the FDA said that wasn't supposed to exist after digestion is being found in our bodies. As far as using the assay for establishing nutrient content of foods before and after, is this something that we can pursue in a good way? I mean, I know that tests are designed in the industry to not find a problem. And that's the problem with the animal testing and that, but we're moving on to seeing, we're kind of in a petri dish mode, but why is not the PCRSA used for our benefit now, for more, for
Well, it's a good question. So those PCR tests and look at the microbiome is now being offered to individuals. There's the Human Genome Report, for example. There's something called uBiome, where you can get your stool tested and look at the microbiome. So it's just starting to hit the airwaves. It seems as though integrative practitioners, whether we're acupuncturists or clinicians or physicians, have been embracing some of the newer technology quicker, and conventional medicine is a little slower. But it is happening, and we're just starting to look at it, those PCRs. Those PCRs are interesting because they only show you what bacteria or organisms are present, not exactly if they're functional, alive, or what they're actually doing. But to remember is we use as clinicians lab tests as guides, not absolutes. What's most important are your clinical symptoms and what we're finding. And so with the lab tests as guides, we can use that to guide us in treatment. A lot of this microbiome stuff is new. And when I prescribe probiotics, half the time I don't really know what I'm doing. Yeah, you say, what? She's prescribed to know what she's doing. I don't know. I'm giving you 25 billion colonies of something, and I'm trying to rebalance your microbiome. And if you thought I had all the understanding whether that's going to work, I try it and I see. So sometimes we're not always sure, and this is really cutting-edge stuff.
Okay.
And it's happening and it's changing, but it's not yet cemented in, and I think it's going to happen.
Okay, but how about if you're looking at nutrient content, right? You can find out how much of a product is still there before
Yep.
and after.
Like looking at specific nutrients?
Yeah, it's about looking at a specific metal that's found.
Yeah, you can measure those.
Before and after.
Your physician can measure those nutrients in your body.
But as far as having a crop, and so you say, okay, this is organic, so we're looking to move forward and to really prove a point here. So we are there studies that at our hand that we have that's showing the difference before and after in a way whether you eat conventional foods?
In people or in animals? Because in people there's some and not much, but in animals I think there's more literature. Howard?
Well, the thing I was going to address is because of the chelation effect of glyphosate,
yeah,
you can do an analysis on a crop or a feedstuff, forage, whatever the case may be, look at the nutrient density, and it will appear that the nutrition is there, but it's biounavailable if glyphosate is present. And it only takes, in the research on plants, where they looked at nutrient uptake, it took 1/40th of the label rate of glyphosate to chelate many of the micronutrients. So it's a very minuscule amount to make that biounavailable. So it's there, but you can't use it.
but it would still show up as there, but you can't use it. So that's what you're saying.
They're working on a new methodology in testing to where they can hopefully be able to determine the availability of what's there, and that's directly because of the presence of glyphosate.
There's actually two things. One, the translocation of the minerals through the plant is reduced. It also kills the beneficial bacteria in the soil, which help turn the unassimilable minerals into something that the plant can assimilate. So there will be less minerals in the plant, and as Howard said, even if they're there, they may not be functioning. And what's interesting is one of Howard's good friends, Art, who's a veterinarian, he'll send organs, livers of dead animals, stillborn, and find no detectable manganese in an area that's plenty of manganese supposedly in the soil, but no detectable manganese in the animal because probably the chelation. So, it's like when you pull the minerals out of the food supply, there are hundreds of disorders that are associated with that. And that's just one of the reasons why these diseases may be related.
And a follow-up to that, there's also studies that document that the genetically engineered crops are deficient in their capabilities of taking up certain micronutrients.
Another question. You had your hand up. Did you? Okay, other question?
I just, before I make my awful comment, I'd like to commend all of you for the work you've done. I really have a lot of respect for it. It's really, I mean, to do this and get the static you guys get from whatever it is out there is really, takes a lot of nerve and courage. But one question that I have, or I already think I know the answer to, is why is this happening? Is this some haphazard thing that glyphosate suddenly appeared? Is it some haphazard thing that Bayer Pharmaceutical had put out tainted blood products in their Factor VIII, killing hemophiliacs for 10 years? I think what we're seeing here, and this is, and you can get on my case, or people can throw rotten tomatoes at me, but there's a certain naivety to what I'm hearing here, and that is, and maybe there's legal repercussions, but we're seeing, in my mind, the implementation of a plan. It's not just, it's glyphosate, it's 2,4-D, it's the vaccines, it's the GMOs. This is an part and parcel of an anti-human program, and the doctor did mention or make reference to the Rockefeller Foundation. They are one of the foundations of this evil that we're witnessing, and so I you know, throw it back on me. But that's the question I get from people, is like, gosh, this is terrible what you're saying, but why would anybody do this? And the first response is always just for a few bucks, and I think the bottom people are in it for bucks, but the people that are implementing this thing are evil. They know it.
Eugenics.
It's eugenics.
Google eugenics.
It started with the Galtons, the Wedgwoods, the Huxleys, and the Darwins in the 1850s. It
started with Plato.
So sure, but that's logically.
Let's have Jeffrey respond.
Yeah. Okay, I'm shutting up.
Okay, so you're not the first person that has made this theory, and I don't have any data to support one way or the other. That's all I got.
Okay.
So, all right, you want to call on someone?
Another question. Let's see, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, I just kind of follow, your thought, but for the same thing, I'm very thankful to be around all you experts, and that you have been working so much in this area. But I have one question that only you, the experts, can answer me, probably, or guide me if I'm wrong. For me, personally, this is a human right violation. And we have been talking about, I hear many people talking about many things. But I feel personally, as a cancer patient, that I am, that my human rights have been violated. And we've been working with the labeling, and all of that, and I wondered if any, because, among attorneys, there are the different areas that they dwell.
So,
why not the human right and animal rights? From that area.
I can give you two answers to the human right and the animal right. One is I was invited to Germany more than a decade ago by a group who wanted to push the human rights agenda as their way of fighting GMOs. I don't think it had any traction, but that was their angle. Another angle came out in the Ecuador constitution, where they gave nature rights, the rights of nature. And it was interesting that the president wrote in that in case of national security, they could allow GMOs. The Constitution said no GMOs, but it was up to the president in the case of national security. He was invited to the U.S. by Monsanto, given the full treatment, and then came back and said, I think I made a mistake by promoting the banning of GMOs, and we should make it more available. So Ecuador is in my sights.
Another question.
Actually, I remember mine. So just trying to counter the industry talk. Something I've heard recently that they're trying to use as an argument, and I know it's fishy, and I already started to do some research, but maybe you have more information, is on the Prop 65 list that Roundup's been placed on now. Our Ag Commissioner pointed out that aloe vera and golden seal are on the list, and he was using that as a reason to kind of poo-poo the whole thing. I started reading a little bit about it on the way over here, and I found out that they were both declared, put on the list the same year, the same day, the same year, based on 35 comments. And I know we've all done things where there's been thousands of comments on things in the past when they don't pay attention, so 35 comments. But I'm just wondering if you know more about that so I can kind of debunk that whole thing. Have you heard that? And when you look, the whole list, it's all bad stuff. And then there's just those two things that seem kind of innocuous. And I know it's got to be shady, like probably the industry got around there somehow.
I'm not sure I can answer exactly, if somebody has more information specifically about like why the golden seal was put on the list. If you take enough golden seal, maybe a couple of thousand grams, you probably will get some liver damage. I think if you take 1,000 grams of, if you eat beef, you'll probably have some liver damage. So why that got on there, I imagine it was a ploy. But I can't say. Does anybody have the answer to that question?
Aloe vera was the other one.
Aloe vera.
I have an answer for the aloe vera. It's the whole aloe vera. I wondered the same thing. So when you have the whole aloe vera and there's the gel in between, there's an orange drip in between the outside of the leaf and the gel. So you need to drip that out. That's why that is on there. I wondered the same thing.
The orange,
Thank you.
The orange
membrane
in
is
between.
toxic?
Yeah, I don't know what it's called. I'm not a scientist. I just know it was on there and I looked it up.
To get on that list, there has to be like peer-reviewed, published research to show that it either causes cancer, reproductive harm. And I'm just wondering, we know how research can be rigged, and it seems like, maybe they only had to show one article and 35 people commented and it gets on the list, but that they're using that to say, well, so these things are on the list, and so it doesn't mean anything that Roundup is on the list.
They say the same thing about coffee being on the probable carcinogen list.
It's coffee.
Well, there's signs all over the place.
I didn't see coffee on there.
We have another question.
Bob, can I
Howard?
follow
Yes.
up to that
Sure.
gentleman's? I can't answer your question, but I want to ask you some questions.
Sure.
Do you recognize any of the names in the center of the circle?
The most evil of the names in the center of the circle is not Monsanto. It's
Do you
it's
recognize
the IG Farm Bayer. I work at Bayer.
When you see AstraZeneca, Syngenta,
Yeah. They're.
what do you think of?
I know very little.
Have you ever seen a commercial on TV that says if you can't afford your medication costs, contact us?
I don't watch television.
That commercial sponsored by AstraZeneca?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of atrazine?
Absolutely.
One of the oldest herbicides on the market.
Right,
That product is made by AstraZeneca Syngenta, who's
Oh, that was
the number
Syngenta?
4 producer of genetically engineered crops in the world. When you see or hear Bayer, what's the first thing you think of?
Factor 8, because I was
You ever heard
there.
of Bayer Crop Science, the makers
Yeah.
of Aztec insecticide, Liberty herbicide, and genetically engineered crops? When you see Pfizer Pharmacy up, John, what's the first thing you think of? Did you know they were the sole parent company of Monsanto at one point in time?
Were they? Pfizer?
So we've established the fact that all the companies in the center of the circle are in the pharmaceutical and the chemical business. So we're going to start with chemical. Please give me one word that you would use to describe a chemical that's used to kill a weed or an insect, and you're describing that chemical to a 5-year-old child. What one word might you use?
Poison.
Okay, we're using poison to raise crops. What do we raise crops for? Cereal and grain. What do we feed the bulk of the grain to? In the fact that we're using this poison to raise the crop, if there were to be a residual effect, do you think it'd be positive or negative?
Negative.
So if there's an adverse effect in using this poison on the crop that could affect the grain, you feed the grain to the livestock don't feel good, who might you call for help? When the veterinarian comes, what might he suggest you give your animals to make them feel better?
Antibiotics.
What if you want your animals to grow faster? What might you give them? What do we raise livestock for?
Well, I don't eat it, but.
So who eats the meat? So if there's an adverse effect using this poison on the grain that might affect the livestock, is there a chance it could be in the meat, it might affect the people? If the people don't feel good, where do they go for help? After you go to your doctor, where might he send you with a piece of paper with his autograph on it? Does that present a positive cash flow for the companies in the center of the circle?
And that's the house that Jack built.
I know, it's like they all got together and say, hey, we know how to make you really rich.
Another question? And we are getting short on time now, folks.
I have a question about the fact that glyphosate chelates. So it not only chelates the minerals so the plants can take it up, of course it does that with us too. And so I'm wondering, is there a way of testing our blood or our urine to see if we're deficient in manganese and zinc and these minerals? So that would be one way of showing that it actually does have a deleterious effect in terms of treatment for that person as well as for a larger study, right?
Well, only if you knew that the food they ate was lacking in it to begin with.
So regular lab tests, you don't need anything fancy, Quest, LabCorp, whatever, can run your manganese or your zinc levels. They do some, they don't do all of them. They can certainly check them, but the trick is they have to order red blood cell levels and not plasma levels, because plasma is almost uniformly, your blood will do, your body will do everything to keep plasma levels normal. So you have to look at the levels within red blood cells. And so what you do is, and which is something I do, you check it. If it's low, then you make the corrections. You correct the gut. You heal the leaky gut, you rebalance the microbiome, you restore nutrient levels, and then you recheck it, and lo and behold, they restore. But people actually feel better, so you have clinical proof because you feel better, but you can then recheck it and your levels will come up. Your manganese, your zinc, your chromium for your thyroid function, it's all linked. For all those different body functions, you need those minerals to run enzyme systems. They're called metalloenzymes. So for example, I think most of the population now is magnesium deficient. It's a profound issue right now. You can have your doctor run a red blood cell magnesium level, and you just can't throw magnesium. See, that's kind of green pharmacy, just throwing nutrients at yourself. You have to change your diet. And it's very hard to get people to change their diets. Maybe you know that. So, but what people will do is change their diet for their children's diet. So, or their grandchildren for that matter. Be careful with that if you're a grandma or grandpa telling your daughter-in-law what to do. Be careful with that. But yes, and then you recheck and they get better.
Let's have one more
Can we get
question.
some studies published that show that?
Well, I don't know if we can get studies published. It would be great to have those studies. I don't have those studies, but integrative practitioners are doing it. But it's not so easy to do human studies, but that's not the hardest study to do, actually. It's not.
Everybody in this room could go and get their doctors to test their blood for the magnesium and zinc, and then we could give it to one of you on the panel, and then maybe you could use that in future publications.
Through Jeffrey's website, we can do the next.
You got to do a comparison. It's a little more sophisticated.
It's a little tricky. It's not. Yeah.
We have one more question, and let's go back to the cameraman.
So I want to thank you all for your commitment and research. I've learned something new today. I was a little bit shocked to hear that some judges and politicians might get under the table payments or work for large companies. I'm shocked, but I'd like to say, and it kind of accentuates what you just said. I've actually been a vegetarian 36 years, and I raised my children completely organic. But when it comes to making change, it really starts within. So even though we're here in the Capitol building and we're trying to bring this to the awareness of legislators and make this more common knowledge and get out to the media, the reality, it starts with our own practice of what we're talking about today on our self-awareness. How many of us heard a few years ago when Taco Bell was serving cattle corn? I mean, I know a lot of people really enjoy fast food restaurants, but I've shied away for a long time. I haven't seen a doctor in over 35 years either. But the point being that it really starts with all of us, and it's hard. It makes time for preparation. It can be a little more expensive. But I want to encourage you all to eat organic and educate your neighborhood. Where I live up in Nevada County, there's big neighborhoods that have all gotten together and refused the spraying of Roundup because it gets into the water tables. And actually, some of the solutions they came up with is they hired teenage kids in the neighborhood for less money than the city was spending on spraying to come out twice a year with lawnmowers and just cut the weeds down and take care of it. So there's a lot of very people-orientated, community-based solutions that we can find. And of course, we have to continue the political pressure, but nonetheless make the changes. Let's not wait. I think that's one of the things that's happening with our our country, as much as I love being an American in our country and I've traveled the world, is that we can't wait for someone else to do it. People have to find a peaceful and community-based solution to make the decisions and the choices. And if you want to go to McDonald's or Burger King or Taco Bell or Kentucky Fried Chicken, you know what? Turn and go to Whole Foods, spend a few more dollars, and do the right thing, because it really does affect your quality of life.
Thank
So.
you very much.
Bob,
I
can
just
you-
want to remind all of you, what this is all about today is trying to change, trying to bring good change for the better. And one of the ways you can do that, again, is to work with us. One of the things we discovered today, talking with legislators, is that it's going to take a coalition. And it's going to take boots on the ground. It's going to take people like you. So please, if you're not in our organization already, this is how we can put you in touch with all of us. So I'm going to leave these cards here.
How about I add one thing, Bob, before we
Very
close?
quickly, please.
Um,
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeffrey, I didn't know.
I got the hook from the man. Okay. I do think if Howard or Michelle want to also add what to do, I think it's a good point to end on what we can do. We have a little landing page called Non-GMOs Improve Health. And on there you can see the results of that study that I showed with the 3,000 people. There's an interview with me and Michelle about her clinical experience. You can enter information to get a free PDF of my last book, Genetic Roulette, and a video update. So I would suggest that there was a question about we're just preaching to the choir. I like to use the word arming the choir. And it's like that's a web page, Non-GMOs Improve Health, that you can share with everyone. And it's got a easy to read summary of the article on the left side, the detailed 21-page article on the right side in terms of a click. And that's one thing that I'd like to recommend, is that we all use this opportunity to decide what we can do. And before I turn it over to Michelle, who I'm going to suggest, plug your book. I'm going to also suggest that our attitude be one of switching from victim to victor. And it's like, some people like to thrive on the fight, but we don't even have to feel like, sure, they're trying to hurt us or whatever, make a buck, but we can completely drop the fight piece too and say, yeah, this is our world, this is what we've inherited, this is what we're going to pass on, and so just choose to bless the world and your life with what you know to be true, bless your friends with that information, and become a victor. That's my message.
Can you repeat the site?
The site is Non-GMOs Improve Health.
Thank you, sir.
I'm blessed with serendipity because my neighbor, Dr. Vincent Adams, and I were hiking, and she agreed 4 years ago to write this book together because I was unable to put my tushy in a chair after working in a clinic all day. And without Vincent, Dr. Adams, incredible skill, curiosity skill. She was a major skeptic initially, and now she is totally on board. But her incredible attention to detail, I'm a kind of a big picture gal, but she honed me in on details that we were able to produce that book. And we are very proud of that book, and it really is, I think, one of a kind, to have the scope of a clinician and the broader picture of a medical anthropologist together who understand the big picture. So that marriage is a beautiful gift. So thank you, Vincent.
Thank you.
What's the name of the book?
It's What's Making Our Children Sick, and we really did a great look into the expose of looking at my patients, but in a way that's both narrow and very broad. And we looked at the bigger food, the politics of food, in a big way. And there's the book, What's Making Our Children
What
Sick,
is it?
by Chelsea Green.
Oh.
So,
But you should look at what's making
we're hopeful that we can get it to every parent, every consumer, every eater out there. That's for eaters. And again, as Jeffrey said, we're doing this in a non-contentious, non-fighting way. This is just sharing information. If I can say one thing to families, it would be I have 3 things that I tell parents when they leave the office is eat organic, drink filtered water, and take your shoes off at the door. And if people can do those 3 things, dust is the most toxic thing you bring into your house, although my husband won't take his freaking shoes off. Other than that, if your families can do those 3 things, there it definitely is for better health. And that's just simply what I tell my families.
There is any chance that your book will be translated to Spanish?
I love that question, and we are talking to our editors to get it translated into Spanish. It's going into Polish. That's the first country. Woo-hoo! Go Poland. But yes, Spanish would be great. We have some connections in Buenos Aires, and we'd love to go down there for a little road trip.
I am from Buenos Aires.
North Korea?
I am from Buenos Aires.
You're from Buenos Aires? We're trying to get there. Because there's so many problems, as you saw in Argentina.
Maybe you can translate.
So yeah, we're trying to get there.
Just one comment on 2 things. The Genetic Roulette DVD, it's in the library, Sacramento Library for everybody. But if you could try to get your book into this library system, because a lot of people will look it up and read it in the library system.
And that would be fine. That's on our to-do list.
Could I address that question?
You have to wrap it up.
You can go to your public library, give them the ESPN number, and tell them to order it, because that's what a library is supposed to do.
Good.
You don't have to wait for somebody else to do it.
Yeah, everybody should do that for their public library.
Yep,
It has to go
that's
in.
right.
Central Library Authority.
Tip of the day.
Name's Rothschild.
I'll just say 2 things. Number 1, buy the book. You won't be sorry. I gave it to my daughters, my daughter-in-law, my mother-in-law, all for Christmas.
All right.
And I noticed something today out in front of the Capitol building at the rally. And the good Lord has blessed me in ways I can't begin to count or imagine or appreciate enough. But you remember when different speakers were asking about health? I could keep my hand down. I have 3 of the most beautiful, healthy grandchildren in our community.
Where do they live?
On the same farm I live on.
Do they eat organic?
Friends of my son and daughter-in-law have children with leukemia, have kidneys removed, are on medication. We have beef, pork, chicken, turkey, lamb, milk, and eggs on our farm. People that get that stuff, we've got a preschool teacher. 60% of the children she has in TK are on medication. It doesn't have to be that way.
No.
And, people look at Michelle's book and, oh, well, they're just not like that around here. Open your eyes, people. Look what's going on around you. So,
Welcome to Nevada City Co-Housing. This is my neighborhood where I live. We are 34 townhomes with a big common house as our common facility. And we've been here over 12 years now. Co-housing is a community where we have our own private homes plus extensive common facilities. So when you live here, you really do know everybody. welcome to my place. Why don't you come on in? Yeah, one of the things we love about living here is big porches. So it's like you have a whole extra room outside, and we get to do a lot of our day-to-day living out here. Welcome to my house. This is one of the larger homes in our community. It's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, and it's designed by the same architect that's doing Fair Oaks Eco Housing. I love here is the efficient use of storage. So this is the storage underneath the staircase, and you can see when it's well organized, I can fit all sorts of stuff in there. And some of our closets upstairs are extra deep also, so there's shelves behind the clothes there. So this architect is, Chuck Durrett, is really good at working in storage possibilities wherever he can. So we own our homes as private condominiums, just like you would buy any townhouse. And we're members of the Homeowners Association, which is what manages all the common areas. I think what's different about co-housing is a much higher level of involvement, where people are actually involved in the management, and we're actually much more hands-on in terms of both doing the landscaping and maintenance and knowing our budgets. Nobody's doing it to us, we do it ourselves. Welcome to my back porch. I eat a lot of meals out here in the summertime, and it's great. One of the things with these co-housing designs is that we have a community side where I can sit on the front porch and might talk to neighbors. People might join me for a glass of wine. Or if I've got a good friend over and I want a little more privacy for a more private conversation, I'd sit on the back porch. So again, we're always looking for opportunities to have both privacy and community, depending on your mood, depending on what you feel like that time. I'd like to introduce you to my friends, Marty and John here from the Fair Oaks Eco Housing community. And you're trying to create a community.
I'm in love with this community. I love the way it feels. And I saw this community from the beginning a number of years ago, met Katie McCammon, was so impressed with her, and also with Chuck Durrett, the architect. And so I said, hey, we need more of these communities, and I live in Fair Oaks, and so now we have Fair Oaks Eco Housing under construction, and it will look very similar to Nevada City Co-Housing. I also want to introduce my good friend John Zostek, who is one of our newer members, and he'll talk a little bit about what attracted him to this concept.
What I anticipate and expect really is that in my relations with our fellow members, that my creativity will increase and the creativity of the group will increase, and that the intellectual pursuits of this group will be enhanced. This is a very curious group, and I think they are really all lifetime learners, and so it's exhilarating intellectually to be part of this group. And there's also the quality of teamwork, because we do some of our own work to maintain our facilities, our common facilities. And when you have real teamwork, you feel good. And you feel like you are part of something very important. And there's a quality of satisfaction and accomplishment that comes along with that kind of work. So I really do look forward to that sense of fulfillment in several aspects of living.
And for me, one of the attractive points of co-housing was having helped my mom in her final years move from an independent living facility to assisted living to a nursing home, all because she needed to for her care, and she'd been living on her own in a big house. And having gone through that with her, I recognized how it was not ideal. And that I wanted to look for other opportunities for me and my partner to have a different end of life scenario as much as possible. Whether or not we will end up needing those facilities in the long run, it feels like being in co-housing will help us put that off.
Another great feature about co-housing is the ability to do shared gardening. I'm here in front of the Nevada City Co-Housing, which as you can see is not only productive, it's beautiful, and it fuels a lot of the common meals. So they get a lot of fresh produce, and we're planning to do the same thing in Fair Oaks. It's a beautiful June day in Nevada City. We just took a tour of Nevada City Co-Housing, summer 2018. In less than a year, we'll be moving into our own home by this time next year. 30 families will have moved into our homes, and I can't wait. I am really excited about Fair Oaks Eco Housing because we're a combination of smart growth, green design, and quality of life. Smart growth because we're an infill location and we're not doing sprawling all over the planet. We're right next to Fair Oaks Village. We're right next to the American River Parkway. And we're taking land that once just had 2 homes, and now we'll be putting our 30 homes in a wonderful, compact, friendly design. Green design because we have so many energy efficient features. We're solar ready, and our utility bills will be way less. Plus, the other exciting thing about community is that is the secret of sustainability, because we all help each other become more sustainable. We learn from each other, and in community, it's a safe and supportive environment, and I can't wait to move in. Hi, I'd like to give you just a little bit of an idea of what we started with, what the project looks like. So if you look here, you can see the land that we bought is 3.7 acres, had just 2 homes on it, and we tore those homes down. We're now under construction, and what it will look like when we all start moving in next year in 2019 is this compact community with all the homes that face each other with front porches and all the parking off to the side, and with a shared clubhouse and swimming pool and spa and workshop and garden and orchard and a wonderful quality of life. Here's the picture of what our buildings will look like, the architectural design, and you can see we have adjacent townhomes, and so it's very energy efficient. And if you'd like to learn more, we have tours twice a month, and all the information is on our website, fairoaksecohousing.org, and we invite you to just come and check it out. Thank you. Maybe.
So what I love about co-housing is all the opportunities just to stop. I work at home and I just needed a break, so this is my equivalent of the water cooler conversation. I found a neighbor to come chat with and catch up with.
Hi, my name is John Gray. I have a small farm in Butte County up in the foothills. We're homesteaders off-grid, and we have a small little factory, if you want to call it that. I make bird products out of Manzanita. We've built our farm up from bare land, using whatever we can. We own everything, right? We try not to involve ourselves in banks. We work hard. We really work hard to make things happen and to make a comfortable life for ourselves. My wife and I and our sheep are very happy to be in this county, Northern California. It's beautiful. It has its challenges. That's it on that part.
So as a local homesteader and living off the grid, how do you feel right now as far as maybe our county, our state, or our country's ability to be really at the cutting edge of this new paradigm of thinking and appropriate technologies?
I feel that our country is going in the wrong direction. It's not taking advantage of the cutting edge solar, the cutting edge wind, and the technology that is behind it. We're staying with a used up old paradigm that is going to do nothing but cause us problems in the near future. we have allowed other countries to dominate and take over the solar and wind technologies. We had everything going for us, and we basically gave it away to some other country. We will lose because of that, and we'll lose big. The future holds great things for solar and alternative energies. We need to understand that and to get involved in that as much as we can.
So why do you think it's that way? What's the motivating factor for the lack of progress and common sense in our domestic energy and energy creation?
Political ignorance and money and power. They're still thinking about the oil wells they're spewing this liquid gold into their pockets, and we need to think more about how we use the petroleum and how we use the new technologies of fracking, which is damaging the earth beyond comprehension. And we don't see what we're doing. We don't have a history of what we're doing. We don't have the forethought to know what it's going to do to us. The earthquakes that are starting to happen are going to really cause us problems. There's going to be pollution into our water. Our water is life. We are water protectors. We have to protect our lives. We have to protect our water.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. Have a great day.
First and foremost, earlier this week, actually late last week, I did something that I never, ever, ever wanted to do in my whole life. I signed a piece of paper that officially launched a lawsuit. Not only was it a lawsuit and was I, the plaintiff, and it was against the state of California, so welcome to litigation, I suppose. As I've said a few times in email and a few times in person to various communities around the state in the last week, I'm very committed to seeing this through efficiently. We're not going to waste money. We're not going to turn this into a job security lawsuit for attorneys. We're going to get it done efficiently. We're going to get it done expeditiously. We cannot wait for a resolution. We need the answers sooner than later. The more licenses that are issued, the more plants go in the ground, the harder it's going to be to fix the wrong the Department of Food and Agriculture has done. And lastly, I'm going to do this respectfully. This is not about burning bridges. This is not about who did what. This is not about finger pointing and accusation. This is about a simple disagreement of law. This is about a law that was passed by the voters of the state of California that ensured that the adult use and medical cannabis marketplaces would be built around small and mid-sized businesses by delaying large cultivation for 5 years. And it's about closing a loophole that allows large cultivation to take place right now today. There are businesses that are licensed by the state to grow multiple acres of cannabis. And that is a travesty when communities like yours are still struggling to get a permit, just a basic permit. And so what we're going to see in 2018, Diana asked me to talk about some of the specific priorities that we have in 2018, but I want to talk big picture for a moment first. There's a lot of folks in different parts of California, and they're dancing in the streets, and they're saying we legalized, and the war is over, and I just, every time I see these celebrations, I get so frustrated knowing that only 13 out of California's 58 counties are issuing permits. That 70% of the land mass of California is still living in the shadow of prohibition. And it's heartbreaking to see some people saying it's done. Let's keep it moving. Let's move it along. Let's go big. Let's go fast. And our message in 2018 is quite the opposite. It's slow down. You're moving too fast. Prohibition started in California in 1913. We have been living under this injustice for 105 years at this point. We don't have to undo all of it overnight. In fact, it's impossible to do so. We have generations of trauma embodied in our experience. We have to make right on those wrongs. We can't simply say that everything is okay. We have to do the hard work. So what you'll hear from me a lot over the next few years is slow down. California needs time. The light needs to make it into the shadows. You need time to make those connections, to build those bridges, to work with your community, to make the wrongs right. So obviously this lawsuit is not about carving out a protected market niche for inefficient businesses, as some of our opposition have suggested. Oh, you small farmers, you're gonna go the way of the dodo bird because you can't keep up. No, 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 no. This is about making sure that the artisans and the craftspeople who grow the best cannabis in California, who have built California's global reputation as a leader in cannabis, have the time they need to transition. I am not afraid for your future. What you do is something that an industrial farm will never be able to do. You grow a product that embodies your love. You grow a product that embodies your values. And you need to bring those values to the market. And that's what this delay is about. Eventually, there will be time for all of the business types. And you know what? There are likely to be consumers that, for economic reasons, are forced to buy products that are not the best. And that's great. There will be producers who produce those. But what we are fighting for and what we are standing for is an economic development trajectory that puts us, people, at the forefront of economic activity. That puts us, our communities, at the forefront of commercial activity. This isn't about making a lot of money. It's about making enough money to get by. It's about making enough money to stay on our homesteads, to stay on our land, to stay on our farms. And what I want to tell you is that there are people out there that get this. And every day there are more and more people who get this. Yesterday I did something unusual, at least for me, I don't know. You know, born at home, raised off the grid without much electricity. Ended up on talk radio with a relatively conservative Orange County talk show radio host. And we're chatting on the radio during rush hour, which I understand in LA and Orange County, there's a lot of people on the roads. And so we're talking, and you know, halfway into this 20-minute interview, this guy who we don't have a lot in common politically, he says to me, you know, I think you guys have won. 20 years ago, I believed the madness. But at this point, I hear you, I believe you, and I understand that you're just like any other small business owner that's fighting for a future for his community and for the people that he knows and loves and cares about. And to hear that, and then to hear that person go on to say that every Republican member of Congress that comes onto that show, and he interviews a lot of them, he's gonna ask them, where are you on the issue? Why aren't you descheduling? Why aren't you respecting our rights as a state? And so the times are changing. There was a question or a comment that came up earlier, I think it was Maria, but you know, this idea of is it worth it to get regulated? Can we afford it, etc.? And what I want to tell you is that cannabis is on the right side of history. Prohibition is falling. It hasn't fallen yet, but we are on the right side of history. And getting a permit is the only way that you can stay on the right side of history. 20 years from now, the folks who chose to go the other way are not going to be the ones that are succeeding. And like it or not, the rules that they are putting forward are the rules that we have to play by if we want to move forward in the positions of leadership, the positions of love and compassion that we've carved out for ourselves. And so there's a lot of work to do. You guys are doing it better than any county in the state as far as I'm concerned. We've got a lot of amazing partner organizations around the state. You guys continue to inspire me more than any of them. Don't tell them that, though, please. Oh, shoot. Oh, rats. That's true. Sierra County, too, and Yuba County, too. I actually don't even really know where the 3 counties work out there. It gets complicated when you head out the road. So, long story short, we're not done fighting, and we're not going to be done fighting. We're gonna fight till every last heart and mind is won, and we need you to stick with it. Every one of you knows somebody who needs to be here that isn't. I know it's snowy out there, and I totally understand. I'd probably be making snow angels right now, too, if I had the choice. Nonetheless, you all know somebody who needs to be here. We are not going to do this alone. We're going to do this together. It's the only way we can do this, because inherent to what we're doing is a sense of community and compassion for one another. And so we all need to get out here and make this happen. My job down in Sacramento is to represent the interests of our community statewide. Now imagine what that means when you've got some communities like Humboldt, they've issued a fair amount of permits, they're going pretty big, they're moving fast. You guys don't even have permits yet. You know, we're looking at bands, very, very diverse community, very diverse set of needs. And so we have a very robust process that we use to determine what our priorities are. This year, we're looking at a few things. Everybody knows what an appellation is? Maybe, all right. So this will be the 4th year that we're working on appellations. Last year, we opened it up. Appellations are really based on geography, where the plant comes from, where the product comes from, the provenance, the soil it was grown in, the sun it was exposed to, etc. But there's more to it. And last year we were able to get into law a few words that are, in my opinion, core to this idea of appellation. Standards, practices, and varietals. And so in addition to just where you grow it, how you grow it matters. In my opinion, it is not a traditional product if it is trimmed by a machine. No hating on the folks who make machines, that's all good. Trim machines are rad if that's the type of business you're in. But handcrafted, love-grown, small farms, these are very important tenets of our culture. And we need to keep those tenets of our culture alive. And what we need to do with them is bring them to the market. We need to inform the consumer about the differences in the product. And guess what? California consumers share our values. And what values translate to in the marketplace is market premiums. And the difference between an $8 retail gram and a $12 retail gram is more than enough to keep any farmer on the land. And so what I would encourage you is don't give in to the fear-mongering. The crash, the price crash, yes, the commercial grade price is gonna go down. Industrial farmers will be able to produce THC for much, much cheaper than you can. But industrial farmers will not be able to match you on quality and on value. And the California consumers care, and they're willing to reward what you put into your products. What we need to do is come up with the terms that best describe that. We need to define those terms, and then the state will protect those terms so that they will have real and actual meaning in the marketplace. Secondly, we're looking at a commission. Most commodities have commissions. These are groups of growers that get together and make decisions for growers. And why this is important is when those appellations come up, we're going to need you guys to tell us what the rules are. What the heck does handcrafted mean? Does that mean you didn't use a shovel? Does that mean no till? Does that mean no scissors? Where exactly are we drawing these lines, folks? We're going to need growers to help us determine that. And here's where go fast or go slow comes in. If we launched the Cannabis Commission tomorrow, you guys wouldn't be a part of it because you're not licensed growers. And so you're going to find that there are a lot of folks in the state who want to go, go, go. They want to form a commission now. That commission isn't going to represent our community because that commission is going to be composed of the places that are getting permits today. And that's very problematic. And so it's this very challenging position of wanting to see these things happen, but wanting to hold back long enough that you all have an opportunity to get in. And so it is a very tricky time in our community. What I can give to you, and I think I articulated this a bit the last time I was out here, which was at a totally different venue. Big ups on this venue, by the way. This place is awesome. There are other folks around the state. The majority of folks around the state would rather wait so that you guys, Sierra County, Yuba County, the growers out in Big Sur, so they can get into the market. They'd rather compete with everybody and have it be fair and level. And there's really just a few folks out there that want all of it. And so know that you are on the side of the people, know that you are on the side of the majority. And we're gonna try to move some of these conversations forward while at the same time not moving so fast that we leave anybody behind. Another point I want to stress is that, you know, we're through sort of the big decisions. We've done the medical regulation thing, adult use is legal now, we're working, you know, a lot of the big questions are answered. And now we've got a lot of details. And, you know, negative energy and negative words, they're really a waste of time and passion. Sometimes they're warranted. Sometimes we do have negative reactions and it's justified. Make sure you reserve those reactions for the truth. Ask questions. Don't assume. So many times we hear something, we hear a little seed and we just get afraid or we get anxious, whatever it is, and we let that spin out of control. Don't. We need you to stay focused. We need you to operate on good information. If you have a question and you can't find an answer, email. Everybody got a pen if you want this email address? policy@cagrowers.org. Send a question, any question you have, before you react, before you get upset. Don't assume. Your negativity will drain you of your vitality, and we need you to stay positive. It's going to get dark. The dawn is coming, but you know that hour before the dawn is the darkest, right? You're farmers. You've been up before the dawn. I know you have. You know what I'm talking about, and we need you to stay positive. So get that information before you make any assumptions. Real quick, I want to mention something. You guys, Diana gives me 5 minutes because we're running late, so we're going to do some questions to us then. You guys, everybody here has an I Am a Farmer, I Love My Farmer t-shirt. Raise your hand if you have one of those. Awesome. Get one if you don't have one. We've got more, and there's a really, really important opportunity coming up for you to get one if you need one. February 20th at 9:30 a.m. in Sacramento, the Assembly Committees on Health, Business and Professions, and Agriculture will be meeting in a joint oversight hearing. I have it on very firm statements from the chairs of all three of those committees that the Department of Food and Agriculture will not leave the room without telling us what happened to the acreage cap. I wish I knew. If I knew, I would tell you, but I don't know what happened. I don't know who talked to who. It caught me as off guard as it caught the rest of you. I mean, yeah, obviously, somewhere along the way, somebody paid somebody and a lobbyist and this one, but I don't know. The chairs of those committees are just as confused and upset by that as we are, and they are going to demand answers of the agency. And so I would encourage you all to be there, again, to be respectful and to stay focused. We don't need to cause a scene. That's not going to help anybody. You know how the prohibitionists love when we cause a scene, so don't do that. But be there in the room. Bear witness. Show power that you are present, and take that power back, because really it is yours. I'm gonna make sure, oh goodness, taxes. We do have a bit of a tax problem in the state of California. Got a bit of good news. We could, according to Legislative Council, we could reduce the state excise tax rate without going back to the voters. We do have language that would do that. We don't have a committed author yet. In the next few days, we are going to ask a lot of you to help us find an author by making noise about the tax rate. What we've done is suggested that the 15% should go down to 5% for 5 years, and then we'll look at it and see what it looks like. But give us some time to get our feet under us, that same transition period. Let's keep things open to the future, and let's not choke it now. So, with that said, I just want to, I remember that, what? Oh gosh, direct to market. I love that I have so many board members that our strategic plan was like 38, actually it's up to like 44 pages now, so I'm trying to pull, direct to market, thank you, it wasn't on my list. A major priority for us this year and every year until we feel that we have reached parity with the Direct Marketing Act of 1996. Coincidence that the Compassionate Use Act and the Direct Marketing Act passed in the same year. Earlier, Diana mentioned agritourism, farm stands, things that people come to the farm and do. Those things were very difficult before 1996. The Direct Marketing Act made it possible for small produce farmers to proliferate and thrive in a way that they really couldn't before that. There was a pretty dark time. Certified farmers markets largely grew out of that legislation. Farm stands. We are going to emulate as much of that as we can for cannabis. Right now we have a committed author with a bill that's going to allow events to occur at any locally permitted facility, not just a fairground. That's a great start. We're working with that author on amendments to allow for growers to get temporary sales permits. The difference between a wholesale gram and a retail gram is make or break. Everybody can make a living off of 25 plants if they can sell that produce direct to the consumer at retail. And guess what? The consumer is stoked too, because they know their farmer, they get the best products, and they get it for less than they do at the retailers. And so there really is a win-win here. The state legislature has recognized time and time again that efficient supply chains in agriculture are critical to protecting the culture of farming that means so much to our state. And so we're going to need your help on that one as well. What else did I miss there, boss? Before I move on? All right, one more thing. The very first time, actually, Nevada County was the first county that I spoke at, goodness gracious. Nevada County was the first county I spoke in outside of Humboldt and Mendocino County. I grew up in Humboldt, but right on the Mendo County line, so started to know both of those real well. Got out here, I believe it was March of 2014, and at the time I had a stump speech, you know, one of those things that you just repeat over and over and it gets kind of boring, but you pretend it's still exciting. I haven't given that stump speech for a couple years. And I want to remind everybody, or maybe not, because not many of you were there. It was pretty much Jonathan and Basil back then, and Mark. Yeah, no, exactly. A smaller room though. We're a sleeping giant. Cannabis in California, it's the biggest cash crop, but nobody knows it. Nobody knows we're here. Nobody knows us. We've made so much progress in the last few years, but we're just barely starting to emerge from our slumber. And I need you to wake up. And I need you to wake your neighbors up. And I need them to wake their neighbors up. And I need everybody, not to be too alarmist, but ring the alarms. Jeff Sessions helicopters may soon be flying. And we need each other more than we've needed each other recently. We are a giant. We can not only change California, we can change agriculture. But we're only going to do it if we wake up together. So I need you to get out there, and I need you to ring that alarm, and I need you to wake everybody up. Because we need to do this. This opportunity will not come again. The steamroller of history will continue on, and we'll either have the permits and licenses we need to shape that regulated market, or we'll be forced into the market without regulations. The marketplace where environmental crimes and violent crimes are normalized. And you don't want to be on that side of the line. That's not who you are. That's not who your neighbors are. That's not who your community is. So wake up and wake everybody else up. And with that, I'll take some questions and talk about whatever you guys want to talk about.
Raise your hand. Just please be concise, direct with your questions since we are limited here on time. And yeah, you're not going anywhere.
And Soul Medic's about to make us all jump, so let's, yeah. Please.
So my question to you is that talk about the excise tax, which is awesome.
Yep.
What about the cultivation tax, which I calculated is $138 per pound of flour?
Yeah.
And you mentioned something about the tax for trim.
Leaf.
Yeah, it's going to be like $35, $38 a pound.
Yep.
Like that. So is there anything on that regarding you mentioned the excise tax?
You know, it doesn't appear as though we can change the leaf and cultivation tax without going back to the voters. We may be able to change the rate, but it's a bit trickier. The excise tax, we think we have more mandate on. I'll just say though, I'm not afraid to go back to the voters. Frankly, I think we have a really good case and we have a much, much better tax program. In a perfect world, we'd get rid of the leaf tax. We'd tax concentrates based on potency, the same way spirits are taxed. We tax beer based on volume, flour on volume, the same way beer is taxed. The reason why microbrews have proliferated is because of that reduced tax rate. Cottage growers should be exempt from taxes. Type 1 specialty growers should pay a very low rate. Type 2 small growers should pay a medium rate. Medium and large, you get the point. The fun thing about this is the state gets more money because the bigger businesses are paying a fair share because it's a progressive tax. We probably have to go back to the voters to do this. We are working with some lawmakers to get the language drafted. The best, fastest, most expeditious way to get it done would be to have the legislature put it on the ballot. Whether or not the votes exist to do that, we'll see. I do think it's possible in 2018. I think it's potentially likely by 2020, but it's going to be a tricky one. Sure, you need to cook the taxes into the cost that you take, and 400 pounds probably doesn't cover the cost of production, so probably can't sell it for that.
But we have a large population here.
What's that?
We have a much larger population here in California.
Sure.
Which might be our redeeming.
There's a lot of consumers in California. Californians do like their cannabis. I'm going to say this, that folks talk a lot about the price crash. And it's true that those states, that the bottom price is lower, but it's not across the board. And what none of those states have done, which we need to do, is establish grades. If there were no grades for beef, small ranchers would be out of business. But there are grades for beef. And grade A beef that's grass-fed is worth a lot more per pound. And so that's where articulating those values. That's where distinguishing your product. We haven't done the workshops up here. I don't know, there's the boss. We should do them, but your farm and your story matter a lot. In the marketplace, your identity is an asset. Identify your products in a way that consumers recognize them. Tell your story. Tell people about your farm.
Follow the golden road, follow the golden road, follow, 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 follow the golden road. We're off to see the Golden Road TV show. You'll find it is a whiz of a show, if ever a show there was. It's arts and culture and history, environment, health, technology, and peace and justice, science, just because of the meaningful things it does. We're off to see the Golden Road TV show.